Don't judge a car by its cover. These unassuming rides are monsters in disguise. These 15 legendary sleeper cars hide insane power beneath perfectly ordinary exteriors. Number 15, 1965, Dodge Dart 426, Hemi. The 1965 Dodge Dart 426 Hemi is one of those cars that makes you look twice. It might not scream, "Look at me," like a bright red Ferrari, but under the hood, it hides a secret monster. This Dart had a big wheelbase of 111 inches and a body that felt like a classic wagon, safe and normal. But don't let that fool you. Pop the hood and there was a 273 engine with a 4-barrel carburetor pumping out 235 horsepower. That's a lot of vroom for a car that looks so calm. This car was fast, clever, and a little sneaky. The special Hemi version had a stronger camshaft and solid tappets that made it roar like a lion on the road. The regular 2-barrel engine was still around, but everyone's eyes went to the 4-barrel version. And then there was the Dart Charger, a bright yellow hardtop with a fancy black interior and cool Charger badges. It was like the Dart was wearing a superhero cape. Same hidden power, now dressed to impress. The very next year, Dodge introduced the bigger Charger B body, and the name Charger became legendary. But it all started with this Dart. It was a car that looked normal in the driveway, but could embarrass much flashier cars on the street. It had style, speed, and a secret that made every car fan smile. The 1965 Dodge Dart 426 Hemi is proof that sometimes the quietest cars make the loudest statements. And if you think this is impressive, wait until you see the next car on our list. This one might just blow your socks off. Number 14, 1971, Ford Mustang Boss 351. The 1971 Ford Mustang Boss 351 is the kind of car that makes your heart beat faster and your neighbor jealous at the same time. On the outside, it looks cool and mean with racing stripes, a sloping rear end, and a tiny spoiler that whispers, "I'm trouble." But the real magic is under the hood. This car has a 351 cubic inch V8 engine that pumps out 330 horsepower and 370 pound-feet of torque. That's a lot of go for a car that doesn't even look like it's trying. It can hit 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.8 seconds and top out at 117 miles per hour. Driving it feels like holding a rocket with a steering wheel. The 4-speed manual transmission gives you full control of that beast, and the rear-wheel drive makes it feel like a proper muscle car. Ford wasn't playing around. They gave it a competition suspension system and power disc brakes, so it corners like it's reading your mind. The 3.9 1-to-1 limited slip rear axle is like the cherry on top, making sure all that power hits the road just right. The engine itself is a masterpiece. It has a special ram air system with a 4-inch bore and a 3.5-inch stroke. The crankshaft is made of nodular iron, and the connecting rods are forged steel, treated like royalty. Cylinder heads have fancy staggered valves and closed chambers so the engine can breathe better and roar louder. The semi-Hemi layout makes it powerful but smooth. Even the outside looks like it belongs in a car comic book. The steel hood has twist locks and dual ducts, while the lower body and rear closure are flat black or argent painted, depending on the color you pick. Mirrors, chin spoiler, and those hockey stick stripes on the sides are all style statements that say, "Don't mess with me." The Mustang Boss 351 isn't just a car. It's a superhero in disguise. A quiet one that sneaks up and blows everyone away when you hit the gas. And just when you think this can't get any better, the next car on our list is an Oldsmobile that will make you rethink everything you thought you knew about sleeper cars. Number 13, 1971, Oldsmobile 442 WW30. By 1971, muscle cars were starting to slow down a little, thanks to new rules about emissions and rising gas prices. But Oldsmobile said, "Not today," and kept the muscle spirit alive with the 1971 Oldsmobile 442 W30. On the outside, it looked mostly the same as last year, with just a new grille and shiny taillight inserts, but the real magic was hiding under the hood. The engine was a big 455 cubic inch V8. New rules made it run on regular gas instead of fancy premium, and the compression ratio dropped a bit. That meant the normal 442 lost some horsepower, going from 365 to 340. Motor Trend joked it was like suing Dr. Oldsmobile for malpractice, but most drivers didn't care. They were still having a blast. The W30 version was where the fun really happened. It had a blueprinted engine, a hotter camshaft for manual cars, an aluminum intake, a low-restriction air cleaner, and a special air induction hood. Horsepower dipped a tiny bit from 370 to 350, but the torque stayed strong, giving it that punch you feel in your chest when you stomp the gas. Less than 1,000 W30 models were made that year, and only 110 were convertibles. That made it super rare and extra special. Even though the 442 line would slow down after this year, the W30 stayed legendary for its smooth power, strong torque, and muscle car heart. The 1971 Oldsmobile 442 W30 is proof that even when times change, true muscle can still roar like a Dodge Superstock up next. That's so fast and clever it could hide in plain sight and still leave other cars eating dust. Number 12. 1968 Dodge Hemi Dart Superstock. The 1968 Dodge Hemi Dart Superstock looks like a normal Dart, all small and compact. But don't be fooled. Under the cover sits a 426 cubic inch Hemi V8 engine that pumps out 425 horsepower and 490 pound-feet of torque. That's enough power to scare bigger cars and make drag strips tremble. It could hit a top speed of 130 miles per hour in just 11 seconds and tear through the quarter mile in the low 10-second range. Here's the crazy part. Dodge never sold a Hemi in a Dart at the factory. Nope. That job went to Hearst Performance, who took 80 Darts and shoved a Hemi inside for drag racing glory. These cars were technically street legal, but Dodge didn't exactly encourage racing to the grocery store. Fitting that massive engine into a tiny Dart wasn't easy. Engineers moved the battery to the trunk for better balance, carved out space for the huge valve covers, and even made bigger openings in the rear wheel wells to fit racing tires. The car could have a torque flight automatic or a heavy-duty manual gearbox so it could sprint or shift like a champ. The Hemi Dart wasn't just raw power, it was smart power. Hearst added a high-capacity cooling system, hooker headers, a solid lifter camshaft, and a cross-ram aluminum intake manifold with dual 4-barrel carburetors. Everything was tuned to handle all that heat and keep the car running like a champion. With only 80 made, it's rare, legendary, and the ultimate sleeper. People might look at it and think, just a Dart? Then it stomps the gas and suddenly you're eating dust. Do you think Hemi Dart was wild? Some Fords were so quick that factory engineers nicknamed them the Sneaky Rocket. Number 11. 1970 Ford Torino King Cobra. Now imagine a car so rare that almost nobody ever got to drive it. That's the 1970 Ford Torino King Cobra. On the outside, it looks stylish, curvy, and like it's ready to slice through the wind. Powered by a 429 cubic inch V8 engine that churns out 370 horsepower and 490 pound-feet of torque. Speaking of performance, it can hit 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 5.6 seconds and top out at 152 miles per hour. This car was all about racing. It had a 4-speed manual transmission, rear-wheel drive, and a gas thirst of about 10 miles per gallon. But don't think of it as just a race car. It even had a back seat, which is kind of fancy for a car built for speed. And the interesting part is that the Torino King Cobra was never sold to the public. Only 3 were ever made, and Ford executives kept them all. One of these rare birds sold at an auction for $453,000 in 2018. That's right, 3 cars in the whole world, and only 1 left the hands of Ford. Ford built this car when they were obsessed with aerodynamics. The curves, the elegant lines, the low stance, all of it was meant to go fast and look good doing it. But NASCAR rules changed, and internal shakeups at Ford killed the project before it could race to glory. Even so, the King Cobra left a legacy. It's proof that sometimes the coolest cars are the ones the world barely gets to see. The Torino King Cobra became a legend on the track. No doubt this Ford was rare and wild, but the next one was truly insane. Number 10. 1968 Ford Fairlane Torino 428. The 1968 Ford Fairlane Torino GT is like a secret superhero car. At first, it looks calm, like your regular neighbor's car. But in the power compartment, there's a 428 Cobra jet engine hiding in there. Officially, Ford said it had 335 horsepower, but anyone who knows cars will tell you it was probably closer to 415. Independent tests later found it pushing out 365 horsepower and 452 pound-feet of torque. That's a lot of muscle for a car that could sneak by without anyone noticing. Here's a fun fact. Ford only made about 660 of these babies with the 428 Cobra jet engine in 1968. That makes it super rare, like finding a golden ticket in your candy bar. They brought the engine back in 1969, but the 1968 version is the real treasure. On top of that, the Torino GT doesn't just punch above its weight, it also looks cool doing it. The front had a full-width grille and quad headlights that said, "I mean business." Smooth lines ran from the front all the way to the back, and the vertical taillights gave it a special flair. Inside, it felt sporty and classy at the same time, with armrests, a horn ring, chrome accents, and even the word Fairlane elegantly written on the rear fender. Ford knew how to make a regular car feel like a superstar. They kept it affordable but added a big engine that could surprise anyone brave enough to take it for a spin. Mid-year changes cut costs without cutting the fun, which is something Ford got really good at back then. It's like they took a plain sandwich and stuffed it with caviar, delicious, powerful, and totally unexpected. The 1968 Ford Torino GT might not shout flashy colors or crazy spoilers, but it has the heart of a lion. And here's a little secret for you. This Ford can sometimes outrun cars that cost twice as much. But don't get too comfortable yet. Up next, we have a Chevrolet that made people's jaws drop. You won't believe what it could do on the street. Number 9, 1968 Chevrolet COPO Nova. The 1968 Chevrolet COPO Nova is like the ninja of muscle cars. You wouldn't think it could hit you with a punch, but yes, it does. Equipped with a massive 427 cubic inch V8 engine, pumping out 375 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque. That's enough to rocket this little beast from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 4 seconds. Forget top speed. This car is all about instant, heart-racing acceleration. Built through Chevrolet's Special Central Office Production Order, or COPO program, this Nova was designed to crush the drag strip. It had a 4-speed manual transmission and rear-wheel drive, meaning the driver had full control over every thrilling second. Fuel economy? Well, the Nova didn't care. 11 miles per gallon was just fine when your focus is on leaving other muscle cars eating your dust. Top speed was only about 110 miles per hour, but it didn't matter, because if you blinked, you'd already be behind. The COPO Nova's story is almost as cool as the car itself. Fred Gibb, a Chevy dealer and drag racer, looked at the 1967 Camaro Z/28 and thought, I can make something better. And he did. Chevrolet, already famous for taking simple cars and turning them into monsters, took the humble Chevy II, which started as a small economy car between the Corvair and big Chevys, and transformed it into a dragstrip terror. Overnight, it went from just a regular car to holy wow, look at that car. Sitting behind the wheel, you can feel it. The engine growls, the tires grip, and every gear change is a tiny victory. The COPO Nova is the perfect mix of everyday car and race day champion, proving that power doesn't always have to come in a flashy package. Stay tuned, because this next ride might take your shock level to another level. Number 8, 1991 Buick Reatta. The 1991 Buick Reatta. Step inside, and suddenly you're in a little luxury spaceship. Buick wanted a car that was stylish, clever, and sporty without yelling, "Look at me!" Something that could impress without stealing attention from a Corvette or Fiero. This little coupe had a 232 cubic inch V6 engine, packed with clever tech like port fuel injection and a balanced shaft to keep it humming smoothly. It delivers 170 horsepower and 220 pound-feet of torque. That is enough to hit 0 to 60 in about 9 seconds and reach a top speed of 125 miles per hour. With 4-wheel independent suspension, 4-wheel disc brakes, and ABS, it moved and stopped with surprising confidence for a car that looks so gentle. Inside, the Reatta felt futuristic. Its dashboard had digital CRT gauges that glowed like tiny computer screens. The center console's touchscreen controlled the radio, air conditioning, car diagnostics, and more. A rare treat in the late 1980s and early 90s. Buick was trying to pull in younger buyers, import lovers, and even women, who ended up being nearly half of the drivers. Each Reatta was crafted slowly and carefully at the Reatta Craft Center in Lansing, Michigan. Instead of rushing along an assembly line, the cars moved station to station on computer-guided platforms, giving workers extra time to perfect every detail. Every vehicle came with a leather-bound owner's manual, making you feel like you just bought a tiny luxury palace on wheels. Sales never went through the roof, about 21,000 units over 4 years, but the Reatta found its fans. Collectors like Paul Gomberg fell in love later and now own fleets of Reattas. These cars are tough, with some running over 300,000 miles. The only real headaches are small electrical quirks if they sit too long, but overall, the engines and transmissions are nearly bulletproof. Could it have been faster? Sure. A turbocharged 300 horsepower version or a mid-engine setup might have made it legendary. Even so, the Reatta remains one of the most underappreciated Buicks ever made, proving that comfort, tech, and sporty fun can exist quietly without needing to shout. But don't blink, our next Buick sleeper is like a quiet magician, ready to wow you with hidden power you'll never see coming. Number 7, 1987, Buick GNX. The Buick GNX, a shiny black car that could sit quietly in a driveway, sipping imaginary lemonade. But this was no ordinary car. It was a secret superhero on wheels. In 1987, Buick wanted to give its Regal Grand National one last hurrah before saying goodbye to its rear-wheel drive days. Only 500 GNXs were made, all black, so if you weren't lucky enough to order one, you missed your chance to own one of the coolest, fastest cars ever. The engine was where the magic happened. Buick teamed up with McLaren engines to take the 232 cubic inch turbo V6 and turn it from a good car into a rocket ship with 300 horsepower. They did all kinds of fun car wizardry. They polished the engine heads, added a bigger turbo with a ceramic turbine, installed a dual exhaust system, and upgraded the computer that controls the engine. Even the air coming out of the intercooler stayed cool, so the car could run super fast without overheating. The GNX could hit 124 miles per hour before the engine politely said, "That's enough for now." ASC, another car-smart company, made sure the GNX didn't explode from all that power. They gave the transmission a new valve body, so shifting gears felt solid and thumpy. The rear axle got extra strong parts to handle all the torque without going crazy. Huge Goodyear Eagle V R50 tires made the car stick to the road like glue. Fiberglass fender flares kept the tires from slicing up the body, because that would be bad. Even with all this power, the GNX's suspension wasn't a racetrack dream. It still bounced a bit on bumpy roads, but who cared? The engine roared, the tires squealed, and every drive felt like a mini roller coaster. 0 to 60 took 4.7 seconds, and the quarter mile flew by in 13.5 seconds at 102 miles per hour. Only a Porsche 911 Turbo was faster. Inside, the GNX shone like a tiny disco. Chrome and shiny metal sparkled everywhere. The dashboard had easy-to-read gauges for speed, ERPM, boost, and oil pressure. Seats were firm but comfy, covered in gray fabric that held you tight like a big hug. The car may have looked simple, but its roar and tire squeal made it unforgettable. No doubt fans of Turbo Monsters and Grand Nationals were heartbroken when it left the showroom. This car was a legend in disguise, a real sleeper car superstar. The next ride looks like an everyday sedan your grandma might drive, but its engine? It hides enough power to make race cars sweat. Number 6. 1984 Dodge Shelby Charger Turbo. The 1984 Dodge Shelby Charger Turbo was a little car that packed a big surprise and had tricks that made car fans' eyes pop. Its turbocharged engine had 146 horsepower, enough to make it zip up to 119 miles per hour. 0 to 60 miles per hour? Just 7.6 seconds. Not too shabby for a car that might look like it just wants to sit in traffic. The turbo was the real magic. It could push extra air into the engine, giving the car a secret boost when needed. Chrysler made sure the engine and frame were strong so the car wouldn't shake when going fast. Extra strong mounts kept everything steady, like a superhero in a race car costume. Even the wheels got some love. Special drive shafts made sure all that turbo power went to the ground smoothly. No pulling to one side, no surprise spins, just smooth, steady speed that made driving feel easy, even when you pressed your foot down hard. Handling was smart too. The power steering gave just the right amount of control, and the upgraded suspension helped the car hug corners while still feeling comfy. Seats held drivers in place, so nobody slid around like a snowball in a bathtub. With all this, the Shelby Charger Turbo was a legendary little machine that made every drive feel exciting. We're only at number 6, and the legends keep coming. The next car on our list is like a magician, pulling horsepower out of a hat. Number 5, 1984 Chevy IROC-Z. The 1984 Chevy IROC-Z was a car that made people turn their heads, even if it wasn't the fastest Camaro ever. This car could zoom from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 7 seconds and run the quarter mile in about 15 seconds at 92 miles per hour. But what really made the IROC-Z legendary wasn't just how fast it went, it was how it could hug the corners like a race car on roller skates. The IROC-Z came with a 305 cubic inch V8 engine that made about 215 horsepower and 275 pound-feet of torque. That's enough punching power to make your hair blow back. But Chevy didn't stop there. In 1987, drivers could get a 350 cubic inch V8, the same engine in a Corvette. Suddenly, the IROC-Z could make about 225 horsepower and 330 pound-feet of torque. By the time it retired in 1990, that engine grew to 245 horsepower and 345 pound-feet of torque. Not as wild as a 1969 Camaro RS ZL1 with over 500 horsepower, but the IROC-Z had something more magical: control. Chevy made sure this car could handle like a dream. Upgraded suspension, sway bars, and special shocks meant you could take a corner at high speed and barely feel your stomach flip. Every turn felt like a tiny victory, and the car never complained. It was made for drivers who loved to feel the road, not just fly straight down it. Sitting behind the wheel, you felt like a champion without needing a $100,000 engine. And the look? Stylish, low, and cool. People noticed, but not everyone guessed that the quiet little Camaro they saw could dance around turns better than most sports cars. We're so close to the number 1 car on our list, a car so sharp and fast, it can pass big, loud supercars while using very little gas. And when it drives by, everyone will stop and stare. But before that, let's slide to the next car. Number 4, 1987 Pontiac Bonneville SSE. The 1987 Pontiac Bonneville was one of those cars that made you scream, "Look at me!" It had a 231 cubic inch V6 engine that could make around 150 to 165 horsepower and about 210 to 225 pound-feet of torque. That meant you could reach 60 miles per hour in about 10 to 11 seconds and zoom through the quarter mile in 17 to 18 seconds. Pretty solid for a car that looked smooth and calm. The Bonneville didn't just have power, it had style that made people stare. No boxy, clunky car here. The body was smooth and ready to show off without even trying. With blackout trim, a body-colored grille, and big fat Eagle GT tires, it had a sporty vibe that quietly said, "Yeah, I'm a legend." Driving it was like riding a friendly rocket. The suspension handled bumps like a champ, and corners were a breeze. You didn't feel like you were in a stiff, scary car. It balanced comfort and excitement perfectly. The dashboard looked like something out of a pilot's cockpit, with cool red lights glowing at night, and the gauges were easy to read while making the car feel super sharp. Now, the Bonneville had its little quirks, like power windows sometimes acting funny, but that didn't take away from the fun. You still had enough pep to leave other cars behind if you wanted, and the car made sure you looked good doing it. People might not have expected a car that looked so calm to be so confident on the road, and that's what made it a sleeper legend. The 1987 Bonneville proved that you didn't need to be the loudest, flashiest car to be unforgettable. Now here comes the next legend. Everyone will stop and stare, wishing they were behind the wheel. Number 3, 1970 Plymouth Duster 340. The 1970 Plymouth Duster 340 was a tiny Valiant dressed up in a cool fastback outfit and powered by a 340 cubic inch V8 engine that roared like a lion and loved to run fast. And it had a secret superpower: front disc brakes that made stopping feel like magic. The Duster 340 was part of Plymouth's rapid transit system, which sounds fancy but really means fast cars for clever people. Its engine had proven itself by helping smaller darts and barracudas zoom to mid-14-second races at almost 100 miles per hour. The Carter 4-barrel carburetor gave it plenty of fuel to roar, and the camshaft was almost as wild as the mighty 446-pack. Rated at 275 horsepower, everyone knew in their hearts it could really make 325. That's a lot of horses ready to gallop. Inside, the Duster could be customized like a superhero suit. You could get bucket seats with a center console and floor shifter, or keep the comfy front bench. Extras included a pistol grip 4-speed, an 8,000 revolution per minute tachometer, and power steering. No flashy scoops, just dual exhausts and tiny decals that whispered, "I'm fast, but I don't brag." Not only this, the ride was stiff, like sitting on a trampoline made of steel, but buyers didn't mind. They were getting speed, character, and a little bit of a sleeper car all rolled into one. Its rally red paint gleamed like a polished apple, the chrome sparkled like treasure, and the vinyl top and glass were perfect. The interior was brand new, clean, from the rubber floor mats to the headliner. Seats were firm, seatbelts ready, and the steering wheel looked untouched. Under the hood, the 340 engine was a work of art. Every wire, hose, and bolt looked like it had been kissed by a car angel. The dual exhaust shone, the brakes were strong, and the heavy-duty suspension could take corners like a roller coaster. Even the trunk was perfect, with a shiny reproduction tire, mat, and jack ready for adventure. Additionally, the underside was spotless, with rust-free floors, a rebuilt suspension, and a dual exhaust with chrome tips. The fuel system was replaced, the VIN numbers matched, and everything worked like it just rolled out of a magical car factory. The 1970 Plymouth Duster 340 is a tiny red rocket, a legendary muscle marvel that if cars could wink at you, this one would. Number 2, 1987 Chevrolet Monte Carlo SSE. Back in the 1980s, cars were waking up from a long nap. Horsepower was getting stronger, but compared to today's rocket-like machines, the cars back then seemed kind of slow and shy. The fastest Corvette had 245 horses under the hood, and the Camaro's 350 engine could only be paired with an automatic. The Monte Carlo SS came with a little 305 that barely made 200 ponies. But don't let that fool you. This car was still a star in the making, ready to show the world that style and speed could live together in harmony. Enter the 1987 Chevrolet Monte Carlo SS Aero Coupe. Wow, this wasn't just a car. It was a black, sleek superhero on 4 wheels. The long nose, the sharp lines, and that huge rear spoiler made it look like it had just driven off a NASCAR track. People would stop and stare, and you could almost hear them whisper, "Whoa, that car means business." Under the hood, the Monte had a tiny 305 cubic inch engine back in the day, but imagine swapping that for a massive 427 mouse engine. With a Dart Iron Eagle tall deck block, Brodix cylinder heads, a Comp Cams valve train, an Edelbrock intake, and a Holley 950 carb, this Monte could roar louder than a lion with a megaphone. And to make sure all that power stayed on the road, the car had a super strong Fab 9-inch rear with a Detroit locker and sticky tires wide enough to make other cars jealous. The interior was just as impressive. Racing bucket seats replaced the old boring ones, and a custom console held shiny new gauges to watch the car's heartbeat. Even the AC was upgraded, so summer drives could be cool and breezy. Some secrets hid under the floor too, like the MSD ignition boxes tucked away for sneaky style points. The Monte got custom ground effects, a slightly longer nose, and that enormous rear spoiler that made it look ready to fly. A shiny black paint job with a clear coat finish made it sparkle under the sun, and sleek 17x8 wheels wrapped in sticky rubber completed the legendary package. People might say it's just a Monte Carlo, but anyone who knows cars knows it's a hero with speed, style, and personality. With its NASCAR-inspired looks and pro touring performance, this car doesn't just drive, it commands attention. Every time it hits the road, it tells the world, I am legendary and I don't play by the rules. Number 1. 1969 Cadillac Coupe DeVille. Finally, here comes the 1969 Cadillac Coupe DeVille, a giant, shiny cruiser that looks like it rolled straight out of a Hollywood movie. Painted in Persian aqua metallic with a white and teal interior, this Cadillac is basically a rolling treasure chest. From the moment you spot its massive tail fins and quad headlamps, you know this car is serious about style. It's big, bold, and dressed to impress. Its powerhouse had a 472 cubic inch V8 engine that roars with 375 horsepower. That's enough to make other cars look twice and whisper, "Whoa, slow down there." In addition, it comes with an automatic transmission, so you just point, press, and glide like royalty. And don't forget the single exhaust, power steering, and 3-spoke wheel that makes you feel like you're driving a throne on wheels. The exterior is a showstopper. All original body panels are straight as an arrow with no rust or damage, and the paint still sparkles after more than 50 years. The chrome trim glimmers like jewelry, and the glass is crystal clear. Those massive rear quarters, some of the biggest ever stamped on a car. The Cadillac also has those perfect Coke Classic white wall tires on 18-inch wire wheels, looking like they rolled out of a car magazine in 1969. Slide inside and it's like stepping into a time machine. The Cordovan brown Dardanelle upholstery is soft, original, and completely mint. The power bench seat is firm, comfy, and perfectly preserved, with no cracks or frays. Door panels are flawless, the headliner is taut, and even the original carpet and floor mats survived the decades. The dashboard is all original, knobs and vents gleaming, and the steering wheel looks brand new. There's climate control, power windows, locks, dual mirrors, sun visors, and even a retro analog clock that ticks like it's counting down to adventure. Above all, the engine bay is like a museum exhibit. Vacuum lines, cadmium-coated hinges, overflow bottles, and even the windshield squirters are in pristine shape. Everything is just as Cadillac intended, giving the motor that perfect combination of elegance and muscle. The big radiator keeps things cool while the engine idles quietly, almost like a cat stretching in the sun. The trunk is incredible too. Original paint, original liner, original spare tire, and jack. The wooden wedge is still there, and the light works. The underside is rock solid, with original metal in amazing condition. Shocks, brake hoses, muffler, and tailpipe all look fresh, and the Turbo 400 automatic transmission still has its 1969 tag riveted to the side. Driving this Cadillac is like floating on a cloud made of luxury. The steering is one finger easy, the brakes are strong, and the long wheelbase glides over bumps like magic. The suspension is soft but controlled, the exhaust whispers, and the whole car feels alive without ever yelling. Even the full wheel covers with shiny emblems are perfectly preserved and pure 1960s cool. That's all for today. Drop a comment with your favorite, hit like, and don't forget to subscribe for more amazing classic car content.